Welcome, everybody, to Podcast Answers, the show where I help you start and grow your podcast, answering any podcasting questions along the way. That's right. Today is, again, we are doing the same thing. We're answering podcasting questions. And this one is one that I've seen a lot, not necessarily the direct question. And I've talked about it before. I've talked about using Notion for podcasting and keeping all of things in Notion, but I never really went over it. And I wanted to talk a little bit more about it and how I use Notion, because Notion for me is one of those things that is essential. So back when I first started podcasting, a lot of times I keep my show notes in a Google Doc, and that works great, right? I mean, Google Docs work good. They allow you to put everything in Google Docs, whatever, and keep your show notes in there. And the nice thing about that is because you can work on that with somebody else. So let's say that you were working with a co-host and you want to have your show notes available for you to kind of talk as you're doing this. Especially that works great if you're in different locations, you're not sitting in front of each other at the same studio. But there's more that you can do. So I still do that for my shows. I keep my show notes in there for my other podcast, the Dudes and Dads podcast. But for this podcast, Podcast Answers, I do not put anything into a Google Doc. I just don't. I don't do that. I don't put it in a Google Doc. I don't use it like that. All I do is I actually use what's called Notion. And Notion is interesting because it allows you to do notes, but it does databases too, which is where I'm actually going to use it. And so I'm going to talk a little bit today about Notion and why it's important and what I use it for. So this is going to be a graphic heavy one. So if you're listening in the podcast app, I would definitely ask you to check out podcastanswers.com/Notion/video. And that will take you to the YouTube video of this, because I think you're going to lose some of the description. I can describe it the best I can in audio, but some of the stuff you're actually going to need to see. And so I would go to podcastanswers.com/Notion, NOTION/video, if you want to see the video for this, because again, this is a pretty heavy topic when it comes to talking about what actually is Notion. So this right here is Notion. It's pretty nice, because you can, down here on the left-hand side, you have all of your notes, you have your private notes, and what you can do, and I'll go ahead and show you my Podcast Answers notebook. So this is the private Podcast Answers notebook. You can see the content dashboard right here, just a link to something else. And this is my Podcast Answers dashboard. I have a section for news, topics, and I was doing a summer of live this summer, and so I had topics in there for that. But so what I do is, once this flushes out here, you'll see this is essentially just a giant spreadsheet kind of topics. But the cool thing about it is you can filter it, you can add all sorts of different columns for it. And so, for instance, here I have my database is the name of the show. I'm not using any tags. And then I have the episodes. So season 1, episode 1, season 1, episode 2, season 1, episode 3, blah, blah, blah. And then I have the type, which is, I can set this to be what I want. And so for this, I have the type being full, bonus, or YT videos. So YT video is just being a video that's only on YouTube, that is not anything to do with the podcast episode. Full being a full one, a bonus being a bonus episode. Then I have a recorded check mark. I have a published date so I can see it, and then I have the post URL. And actually, I have a whole lot more than that. That's just what's showing on this very first screen, if you will, of the database. So this is the list. But if I click on, let's go back down to one of the latest ones that I've done here. So the last one, the interview tips with Katie Fox. If I click this where it says open, now I'm actually opening the actual record in the database. And so if you see, now you see all of those things. So you see tags, you see chapters. I have a link for my chapters, my cover art link. I have a link for dynamic insertion points. I have an embed for my video player, or for my player. I have the episode, which you saw on the front page. I have featured image. I have media URL, which is the URL for the MP3. I have notes, which is kind of my description of the episode. And if you click in there, you can see it and you can easily copy it. You have a post URL, published date, recorded. If I had sound bites, I could put the sound bite time periods in there, the transcript, episode, YouTube link, and then I have some notes down here. So essentially, this is like your full record for it. So this is where you have like text that you can put in it, but then you can also have whatever. But these are your fields, if you will, your properties, if you will. And so what I'm using this for is I'm using this for keeping my show notes all together. And so essentially, as I'm building my show, I have, if I'm doing any research, I put them in here. And so that way I'm able to go back and see, like when I'm recording an episode, I actually have this up and I'm looking over to it quickly and I'm saying, okay, these are my notes for this episode. These are the topics that I want to talk about, because it allows me to take that and work off of it and actually run my show while I'm doing that. But not only that, but then afterwards I get all of this information. So once I've uploaded my cover art and I uploaded my chapters and my transcripts and all of the stuff, I have links to that. So that way when I actually go create the actual episode, and again, if you've never heard me talk about this, I actually create my episode in WordPress. So I'm using Captivate I'm using Captivate to host my podcast, but I'm using WordPress to actually create my actual RSS feed and my other stuff and my posts and things like that. So that's where that's where Notion comes in huge, because for me, as I'm building it, so I've uploaded my things to Captivate. And if you want to check out Captivate, go to podcastanswers.com/Captivate, and that'll get you over to Captivate, and you'll be able to check out Captivate and why I love Captivate. I have done an episode on it, and it's just an amazing podcast host. But once I've uploaded my information to Captivate, what I then do is I go back into Notion. So I go back in and I say, okay, here's the Notion that I'm doing. This is Notion. And what I end up doing is then I say, okay, as I'm working in WordPress, I end up going through and grabbing, and it's really easy because if you click on it in here, it lets you paste it in, but you can also hover over it and then just click this little clipboard here, copy to clipboard. So if I click that, then it takes it and places it in my clipboard. So then I can just go into my publisher, paste it where I need to, paste it where I need to. But the nice thing about this is now I have all of this information for all of these episodes, and it's super searchable. So let's go back into topics here. I can take it and I can put this little thing here, and I can say, I can search anything. So I can do season 2, episode 3, 2, and I'm going to get everything all listed up that has those things in there. And I can see quickly, easily, if someone says, hey, how do I get to that podcast episode? Or I can say, I know I've interviewed somebody, who was it? I know I episode Katie Fox one time. So if I go in here and search Katie, it pulls it up. I can see the URL for it really easily, copy it and paste it, send it out. I can go in here and I can get any of the information that I need to get really quickly and send that to where I need to send it to. And so for me, this database is more than just show notes. It's more than just having that information. It's having that information available to you at your fingertips at any time. And so the cool thing about that is it allows you to recall any of that information really, really easily. And so what I've done in my other podcast, where I actually have sponsors, I've actually created one of the fields, sponsor fields. And so I've been able to say, okay, if they want to know when they were sponsored on the episode, when episode they were sponsored on, I can go back and pull a whole list for them really easily. And then it's just super easy to go ahead and get that information to them. Now, the other thing is, again, this is a database, right? And so this is like you're seeing here. This is a database, and so this is just a display of the links, but you can change that. So like right now, I have everything showing, but I can show up episode ideas, And this is the same database. It's the same information. I'm just filtering it down. And so what I've done is I've gone in here and called it a filter, and it has 2 rules. And it's where recorded is blank. So my recorded check is blanked, and type contains full, because I don't want it to show things that are YouTube or bonus content. I just want episode ideas for full. And so what I do is I go in here, and every time I think about something, and the nice thing is Notion has an iPhone app. And so it's really easy for you to just keep Notion on your phone. And as you're going throughout your day and you're seeing things that you're like, oh, yes, that would be a perfect episode for Podcast Answers. All I have to do is I have to go in here, open the app, type in the title, or type in, the topic, whatever it is that I want to feature. And then because it's not recorded, I just make sure that it has the post type full. It's going to show up on those ideas and filter when I can filter out. And again, I could do one this is episode ideas. I have one that's all ideas. So again, things that are not recorded, but they're any of the types. I have it published, so you see only things that are published, so you don't see any of my episodes in here that don't have a recorded check mark in it. These are all of my episodes going back to the very, very beginning. And you can sort on any field. So right now I'm published date ascending, which I just realized I don't have published date in all of my episodes. That's why some of them are showing at the bottom here. They really shouldn't be, because they're actually published. But so that's not super helpful. But you can do all sorts of different things with this, right? You can say, there you go. You can show episode calendar, so you can display things differently. So you can say on this one, what I'm doing is I'm filtering to just recorded checked, and then it's going to show on the calendar the published date. So this is really cool. So you can take a look and say, okay, this is when I actually publish these episodes on a calendar. And so again, this is a really handy thing. So let me walk you through this a little bit here. Let's go ahead. I'm going to go ahead and create another one just so we can test it out. So this is a new page, and this is I have a couple different things in mind. This Notion is not just for podcast answers. So we're going to call this test podcast. Now what you do is you can write anything in here. You can do whatever you want. This is just like a document at this point. It has no extra fields in it. It's just a document. But you can go / and then you can put different formatting in here, like to-do lists, headings, tables, whatever you want. But one of the cool things you can do is you can do all sorts of different things. So, but one of the cool things is you can do these databases with line charts and bar charts and donut graphs and all sorts of cool things. All sorts of cool things. And so what you can do is graph your data however you want, right? But so I'm going to say database full page. And so what that does is if you look over here on the left, it creates this test podcast page, and then underneath it puts the untitled page. So if we go back to it, you'll see a link to that. And if we title this something like episodes, now what we can do is you'll see that it says episodes underneath. So under, like, what I've done on mine is podcast answers, and then I have news, topics, summer of life, different things underneath that. But so now I have episodes, and again, there's a table, as you can see, because it is a database. So then what you start doing is you start editing your properties. So you can say, instead of calling it name, which I left my name, you could call it episode title. And then you could do a plus in here, and you could do all sorts of different things: text, number, status, multi-select, status, select, person, date, files and media, checkboxes, URLs, email, phone numbers, formulas, relations, roll-ups. I mean, you have the possibilities are endless here, what you can do with it. It's really, really cool. And so, like I said, if I'm building this out, I would say episode title. And then probably what I would do is I would do an episode description. And this is going to be a field here that you can type in a lot of different things. And then what I would do is I would go in here and I would say status. So you could do status that are not started. You can edit your properties in here, create different things. So if you wanted to have, edited, if you wanted to make sure you had edit things edited, you could do that. You can go back in here and delete your properties, right? So it's pretty easy to do that. And so again, then I would say, let's go ahead and put a date in here. We're going to call this published. And so what this will do is it allow me to have the date that it was published. And if I click on it, it has the date picker. It's easy to do that. So I'm just going to create something super, super, super easy here. Super, super easy and not a lot involved. So select, I can do a select. And then what you can do is click in here and say that you want the properties to be idea. You can have it be a full show, right? Whatever you want to do. So this is the way that you would create these databases in Notion. And then what you can do is, again, you have this table view, but you can create all sorts of different views. You can say you wanted a board, a chart, a list, a timeline, calendar, gallery. Like, this is where the rubber hits the road, because now you could say this is a list, and you could filter it on things. So there's nothing in that one. So now this is a test episode. This is just a test episode, and it'll be released on the 11th. We'll just call it that. Now, if you go to list, you're seeing the list of it, your test episode. If you click on it, edit it, you can open it. You can see the whole record here, if you will, together, add comments, add properties. And the nice thing is you can go back anytime and add properties. So like I said, I just went ahead and added a property for my sponsor. So that way I can go through and filter on all the episodes which have the specific sponsors on them. So that way, if the sponsor is looking for, hey, which episodes was I on? I can go ahead and pull that out. I can go ahead and say exactly when it was. And if I want to take that further, I could say, here's the time chunk that the sponsors are in. So let's just say I wanted to have a field that said advertisement time slot. I could have it from 5 minutes, 20 seconds through 6 minutes, 30 seconds. And that way they know exactly when their sponsored ad hit in there, if you wanted to give that information to them. Because let's be honest, my sponsors aren't at the same time every episode. I'm not at the beginning and not at the end. I'm not at the same spot. It's going to be different. And so this is where it comes down to, you can take this information and you can do some amazing things. And now this is the great thing about this is Notion, and it's at notion.so or notion.com. Both will take you there. But they have a free tier, which actually is pretty amazing. I'm using the free tier, and it's enough for me. It has, like, I think, unlimited notes in it, and it has the limited amount of team members you can have. But I mean, that's really okay. That's really okay. And because you don't, I mean, you can have more team members in here if you're running a big production and things like that, but you don't need to. And so this is their free tier. I would check it out, because again, it's something that works well for most people. Again, I'm using the free tier, and it works. And the great thing is you can go ahead and it's at notion.com, and I will put that up on the screen here. And it's really white, so it's washing me out. But again, the pricing on this is for free. You have a collaborative workspace, integrate with Slack, GitHub, and more. Basic page analytics, 7-day page history, invite 10 guests. But you could go to $10 per seat per month, and you could get 30 days page history, 100 guests, sync database with third-party apps, custom websites, custom automations, charts and dashboards, and unlimited blocks for teams, and just the list goes on. the list goes on. And it's like I said, it's really an amazing product. It's something that's changed the way that I do my podcasting, because Notion, it's allowing me to keep all of my podcast episodes and all of my information in a database. And I have that database, and again, all of the information is involved. If I have graphics in there, they're linked in there. I can do so much stuff with it. Guys, if you have any comments, if you're watching right now and you have any comments, questions about Notion, put them down in the YouTube chat comments. I would love to answer them. But I am using Notion for my podcast for keeping all of my information in it. So again, you can see here, this is my podcast episode titles. It has all sorts of things. I can keep it. This is where I keep my ideas for new episodes. It's where I keep all of that stuff for my podcast. And again, it's free. So check it out. Definitely just check it out. Notion.com, Notion.com will get you over to this Notion app where you can create a database for yourself, for your show. It's amazing because it allows you to keep all of that information about your show handy and able to get it out when you need it. So guys, thank you so much for joining me this time. Again, if you were listening to the podcast episode in the podcast app, I would definitely recommend that you check out podcastanswers.com/Notion/video. That'll take you to the YouTube video, because this is a really graphic episode, as far as graphic heavy, in order to see what I'm talking about. You can listen, but unless you can see, you're not going to be able to know exactly what I'm talking about with Notion. So again, guys, head over to podcastanswers.com/contact if you need help getting your podcast started. Have a great week, and until next time, keep podcasting.